Hi, it's iBookbinding's podcast. Today we have a guest from Mexico, Lucía Farías. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
And as usual, my co-host Pavel joins us from Moscow. Hi, Pavel.
Hi, guys.
So, would you tell us just a bit about yourself, about how you became a bookbinder, and well, yeah, that's it. That's it for now, I guess.
First of all, thanks for inviting me. This is such an honor to be in this recording today. I'm Lucía Farías. I've been a bookbinder for, I guess, like 14 years. I have this really cool story of how I started it. And I always say that bookbinding found me because it was definitely something that I was not looking for. It was just how life came about, and I ended up here after a number of years. So back in the day when I was in college, one of my teachers was kind of out of school, like she was going to be out of town. So she had a substitute teacher, and we made a book with him. It was just an easy Japanese stab binding. And that day I came home and I started putting books apart. Of course, they are just commercial books that I was destroying, per se.
Yeah.
They were a little bit different of what we learned in the class, but that was around October in '98. And then I had the chance to go to Minnesota as an exchange student while I was a student in the university here in Monterrey. I went to University of Monterrey. So the extracurricular activities we had and we were able to take for free, they were book classes at the Minnesota Center for the Book. So I'm like, oh, I've made a book before. Maybe I can learn a couple more different ways of making a book or something. So I, of course, signed up to all the free classes that I was allowed to. And that was it. Like I just took like 3 workshops while I was there for 1 semester. And then I came back and I kept making books all by myself. I had no idea there was such a profession, to call it a certain way, of bookbinding. Like I always thought it was like, just a hobby or like just an entertainment for people that don't have anything to do with their free time. So after a number of years that I was teaching this, I started teaching at the university too before graduating. And I was teaching this 1-hour class a week. And I was showing people how to make the books that I had learned in those classes at the Minnesota Center for the Book.
But your degree in the university wasn't connected to books in any way, or was it?
There's nothing like this in Mexico, not in college. I mean, you can take bookbinding classes. Later on, I found some people in Mexico City that I'll mention them later. But there's no bookbinding classes here in the universities. Like it's not common to find it, at least here in Monterrey. I used to teach at the university, but not anymore. But back when I was a student, there was, no option to even take a class in bookmaking. So then my sister ended up in Philadelphia for a number of reasons, and she got this brochure from the University of the Arts. And they have a really big bookbinding program. So I signed up to several bookbinding classes there, and a printmaking class. No, a printmaking class first, and a glass blowing class. So I still had no connection with bookbinding in the University of the Arts. But while I was there, the printmaking teacher was actually a student in the MFA program at the UArts. So she, in one of our breaks in one of the classes in a summer that I spent in Philly, she took us to the bindery and to the studios and the letterpress studio. And I was like, what do I have to do to be a student here? Like, it was nothing that I was looking for. I knew I needed a master's degree to teach at the university here, But I would have done like printmaking or even painting or drawing, because my degree is fine art. But
well, this definitely may help with bookbinding stuff.
Well, it does help, but I mean, there's a lot of graphic designers that end up being bookbinders. But I don't know. I started with printmaking, and that's how I got into the bookbinding, because when I applied to the school, since it's a printmaking program as well, I was more geared towards the printing part back then. But then I don't even care about the content anymore. I just want to make books, and I don't care if it's a blank journal, if it's something really important inside the book. I just want to make a beautiful book, and I don't really care for the content anymore. Sometimes I make books with content, but it's not, I mean, this happened in the 12 or 14 years that I've been doing this. It's not from one day to another that I said, I don't care for content. But so when I was in school, I had to involve content in my books. But then I just decided that making the actual book is what I am really interested. So now after graduating from UArts, I came back, I started the studio. I'll show you around in a little bit. And now I think 4 or 5 years ago, I went to take my first class at American Academy of Bookbinding. And they have an awesome program, because you don't have to actually move to Telluride. You can just take the classes as you can, like
at your own pace. Yeah,
your time and budget allows. So it's been perfect for me. I haven't taken a bunch of classes yet, but I don't care if I graduate when I'm 90. I'm just going to take classes, because just going there and being there for a week or two, it's heaven on earth. That place is very unique. And having the school right at the end of town with that view, it's to die for. I mean, you've been there, so you know.
Yeah, I definitely want to return there.
What class did you take there, or what classes have you taken there?
I took 2 classes. The first one was with Peter Garrity on box making, and the second one was with Don Glaister on fine binding.
That's the one I took. I haven't taken. I took Peter's the gold standard class.
Yeah.
And I've taken several classes with Don.
Yeah.
And the Julia Miller class. That was a really cool class.
Yeah, Peter and Don are absolutely different people and absolutely different teachers, but both were amazing. And it was, I had some experience before I came to American Academy of Bookbinding. I already was teaching, and the fact that I was teaching was the reason I wanted to go to study, because I wanted to be more sure that I know the things I'm teaching. But still, even in the processes I knew of, and I already knew how to do, and I learned something new from these teachers. So this was very amazing. Yeah. And last year, when we were scheduled to move to the United States last April, I also paid for some classes, and it was a bit of a switch, because there should have been a class about box making with Don Glaister, and the class on leather binding with Peter Garrity. I opted in for both of these classes, and then everything, went as it went.
I had signed up to the design binding class.
Yeah.
And it was Suzanne Moore teaching the class with Don. She's Don's wife. So they were doing a 1-week class, and then I was doing the advanced bookbinding class. So I was there for 2 weeks last September, and we'll have to wait.
Yeah. Maybe next year.
Yes, I hope so. Maybe later on this year. Who knows?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about printing. You're still making prints, right? Are those yours behind you?
No, these are just, well, some of them are my prints, and some of them are just postcards and just stuff that I collect from friends. But no, not all of them. It's just a photogram from way up there. That's mine. All of them are just presents or letters and postcards and stuff. I haven't done any printmaking in like 6 years.
So one of the reasons we were quite happy to see you as one of our future guests and speakers was that you have this pretty wide range of book objects you work with, from pretty I wouldn't say simple but straightforward commercial projects to design binding, to historical reconstruction, to some experimental things. So it's a pretty rare thing to see a bookbinder who would do such a wide range of things. So how does it work for you?
Well, I think the commercial part is mainly to get some income.
Yeah.
I still have to take those projects. I mean, we do have to make some money and pay the bills. So I still do some commercial projects, and I don't mind it because I still need to cover them. I still need to gold stamp them or silver stamp or whatever. And the fun part is when even though sometimes those commercial projects are ongoing clients, like they keep coming back with the same, like I bind the same style with the box for this particular client. When they first come here, I design the project for them. So I put a little bit of there's a little bit of my input in those projects. It's not just some projects that they tell me and I just do the manufacturing. Look, I am actually involved in the design. So some of the projects are very straightforward commercial projects, like just binding projects with cheap materials, and some others are more fun. Like the ideal would be for me to just design the cover for whatever content of the book is, but sometimes they have no idea of how to even put the book together. So I am involved in the process of designing and getting the project to the end. I also, you mentioned some historical models that I've made. I've been this is one of the persons that I've met long time ago, and he's very special to me. He's Rodrigo Ortega. I don't know if you know him from on Facebook. He's all over Facebook, and he's really interested in historical bindings. I mean, he does a lot of everything, but he's really good at teaching those models. And since I would like to do some book repair, I mean, I do basic repairs, but it's really interesting for me to learn how these structures were actually made back in the day. I mean, I would be fortunate enough if one of those books ever comes to the studio so that I have to repair it. But just knowing how the books were made is really helpful for when you need to do any kind of repair. So I know a lot of people that just went to school for book restoration or book conservation. But for me, putting hands on any of those old books, you need to know how those books were made first. That's how I think. Like if I'm putting a book apart, at least I need to know how it was made before I'm putting it apart so that I can put it back together when I'm done. So I've done some really interesting bindings from the 15th century with him. Mainly those and Islamic binding and some springback bindings. I've taken a bunch of workshops from him, and he's really good. And that's why I have that, that niche, because I'm really interested in, and just for the fun of taking workshops, meeting people, I think it's never enough, so just going to Mexico City and staying there for a week, having this intensive workshop, and just for the sake of knowing how those books were made. I have a small collection of those books and looking forward to many more, but it's not something that I would eventually teach. Like I don't feel like teaching that, but you never know. But that's how I ended up with that little section on my website with with the historical bindings.
We would really want to talk to you. In fact, it's been years since we started being obsessed about one of the topics that you cover in one of your projects. And speaking of knowing how to make a book in case one of them comes to you for repair, at least one project certainly didn't come from that desire, because there's absolutely no chance you get to repair a real Girdle book. I mean, there is like 7 of them all over the world in libraries. So we would really like to talk to you about why you made it, how those books were used, because you only see them in paintings and in sculptures, and just the practicalities of it. What's it like?
Do you want me to show you the one I made?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be.
Hold on one second. So this is what I made.
Oh.
And of course I made this with my friend Rodrigo. Yeah, it's really cool. Check out.
We should post a link to his I don't know, website or Facebook under the video.
Yes. So you have the book covers. These are wood covers.
Wooden, yeah.
Yeah, they're laced in covers. Yeah.
I compared it to the original, and it's very close. Of course, not to what it looks like.
There's different models. I think this is the one in the Morgan Library. I'm not sure. I have to double check. But there's several models, and I think this is the one at the Morgan Library.
Have you actually tried wearing it? Because that's one of the questions that I always have in my mind. How practical is it to have that thing with you?
I think this is supposed to be longer. I haven't seen the original in person, but I do think that this like top part here with the leather is longer, because this was supposed to be worn on the belt. So this would hold on. So the belt would go around here, and you would have this whole, like this would avoid the book from actually falling. Mm-hmm. So this was hanging, and this is how you hold it. So this is on your waist, and you hold it like this. So the front of the book actually would be like this.
Oh, so you don't detach it?
No. That was the purpose, like to keep it on your waist and just kind of lift it. So when you go ahead and lift it, this is how you open the book, this way and like that.
And do you think it would be comfortable to go around having this hanging on?
I don't think it's comfortable at all, but and especially because it's not. I mean, it's not that heavy, but it's not that light. So I mean, having this, and they're probably walking or on a horse or something, like who knows? Yeah. But yeah, those are like week-long workshops, and I was living in San Diego for a little bit, for about a year, and I met a bunch of people that were interested in making historical bindings. So I started taking groups of people to Rodrigo. So I had a group of like 6 or 7 people that wanted to make, those books. So I think we've done 2 or 3 trips already. 3, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this was, we actually had Rodrigo go to Oaxaca, and the workshop was in Oaxaca. So it was really fun because we did a little bit of traveling for like three days, and then we had the five-day workshop.
This is something that I definitely would like to try someday. But yeah, there are not so many workshops, and if Rodrigo teaches in Spanish, that's definitely a problem for me.
I know Rodrigo is not doing online workshops for now, but you know who is teaching the? I think it's the other model. I think she actually.
I think Karen Henberg had.
Karen is teaching them.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if they're leather. I think there's velvet.
Velvet or
velvet? No, velvet.
Yeah. Okay.
I think. I'm not sure, but yeah, she's doing a lot of online workshops, so you can definitely find a date for you to take this workshop.
Yeah.
And actually,
or you can come to Mexico and we can go to Rodrigo and I'll make another one. I don't care. I love going there. He knows that.
Yeah.
And actually, more and more of these books have been appearing around. I've been seeing them on reconstructors, people who reenactors is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, medieval reenactors, and it looks really impressive. I mean, it is quite a statement object too. I think it was part of its function.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. You mainly see this in paintings. So one time I traveled to Europe and that was my goal. I regret so much that I didn't take pictures, but every time I went to a museum, I always focus on something when I go to the museum. Like I'm either looking for my favorite paintings or I go with a mission every time I go to a museum, because if not, it gets boring. You're just seeing like paintings and paintings and more and more and more and icons and all this like stuff from back in the day. So I go with a mission every time I travel. So my mission for that trip was to see how many paintings I found with a Girdle book. And I think I found at least 12.
This is exactly how I first found out about them. I noticed one in Belgium, I think, in Ghent, in one of Van Eyck's paintings, and I was like, "What's that supposed to be?"
Yeah.
And now I see them everywhere too. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we discussed this topic of Girdle books with Pavel for several years at least, and plan to write something about it or do at least something. And now it's our lucky chance to finally.
I'm gonna look up for my notes, and I'll tell you exactly what model this one is and where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And and if I find any info or run into some kind of something that I can think you can include in your essay or whatever you're going to write, I'll share it definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd also like to ask about another side of your job, because I saw a whole section of your website devoted to book miniatures. And I'm always intrigued by those objects, because for one thing, they are clearly not practical.
No.
You don't make a miniature book to read it unless you have miniature glasses. I don't know. But
well, you've seen the miniature ones. They always come with this
magnifying glass. Yeah.
So that you can actually read them. I don't even know how they put text so small in those books. I've made some miniatures, and they're just blank pages. Again, I'm just interested in the challenge of making a small book. I don't really care for content. If I ever find a printer that prints miniature text blocks, I would definitely love to buy one and bind it. But I'll show you my two favorite ones. I think you saw those on the website. This was made a while ago, and I was learning how to do the how to lace in the covers.
Yeah.
So this is not, I mean, it's miniature, but it's not that small. And then I made, I took, do you know Dan Essig? I took his, you've seen his work. He teaches these boards, like he decorates and this boards. He uses a lot of mica, and it's like this Ethiopian binding. So I took this workshop and I was obsessed, and that's how I get with every book I learn. I mean, not with the historical models, with the books that don't take that much time. And I usually make them several times. So this is the one I made in the workshop. It has wooden boards, and it's more like a Coptic stitch with, so the wooden boards are again laced, and you have the chain stitch here.
And you have the endbands in place, because it's usually people, at least hobbyists, bookbinders, make Coptic stitch bindings. They do not do the endbands, and I'm always like,
I love this headband.
Yeah, exactly.
I love them.
It makes the book so perfect and so different, because well, yeah.
I know, and I love wood. I love sanding it and polishing wood and like doing all the woodwork. So I've made a couple of wooden board bindings, and then I got this really cool. This is curly maple.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see the.
Yeah, it really looks interesting.
This one's definitely my favorite. It's called Black Palm.
Yeah.
And it's just a tiny.
Yeah, it's a wonderful texture, and the stitching sort of follows the texture, and that's that's interesting.
And that's the spine.
Yeah,
it's really cute. And this is the smallest book I've ever made, and I think that's the one you saw on the website.
Yeah.
So I was just challenging myself, like I'm forcing myself to make a book. This has like a hand sewn headband and like marbled end papers.
Did you have to reinvent any of the processes, or to use some tools that you wouldn't use otherwise? How is binding miniatures different to normal binding?
I guess you just have to have finer tools, and like this is covered with leather, so it's split. It's not. I can't use leather as you get it from the tendons. You have to have it really thin. Otherwise, the turn-ins will be very bulky, and you don't want that. So if it's leather, that's the only thing you have to consider. And for covering, I still use my my Teflon folder, and it works fine. I mean, I don't think you need any like special tools. I mean, they're smaller, but not. I mean, I guess you can use your.
And do you use a specialized sewing frame, or do you just improvise?
I actually never sew on a sewing frame. I'm not used to it. It's kind of like too much for me to deal with the whole frame. Even the books that I sew on cords or tapes, I don't ever use a sewing frame. On every signature, I go back and press it with my bone folder or my Teflon folder, and I don't see any difference so far. So yeah, I don't ever sew on a sewing frame.
Was it how you were taught, or is it just your preference?
No, we didn't even had a sewing frame when I went to school in Philly, and no, I've never, not even when I'm sewing a series of books that I know people have the tapes or cords, and they just separate a little bit and then chop it off. I don't even have one. I don't need it.
It is definitely not a mandatory tool, because you can do it with it, you can do it without it. and it's absolutely a matter of personal preference. However, a sewing frame was one of the first tools I made for myself.
Really?
So,
The first tool that I actually spent money on was a Japanese hole punch. When I was in school, I used it for the first time when I started the program at UArts. The first time I saw that thing, like, I need one. Like, it was, I mean, I've had the bone folders and like, you know, common tools like your ruler and whatnot. But when I saw that tool, I'm like, I need that. It was just amazing. Like, just how it works. It's the best thing. I love it. It's one of my favorite things in the studio. It's a great invention.
I had a similar experience with, so there is this Dutch company that is called Louët, which produces, in the first, they started producing tools for weaving, like weaving wheels and other things. But at some moment, they start making tools for bookbinders. And when I was studying at the American Academy of Bookbinding, I saw their vertical plow, which allows you to cut the front edge and side edges really nice and easy, and then really straight. And I was like, oh, I want this tool, and I'm not sure whose class I was in, but the teacher told me, like, well, you can want it, but it's not a cheap tool because it costs something like 500 or 600 euros. And I decided, well, okay, someday in the future. And last year or a bit earlier, I had a chance to buy a second-hand one for 100 euro or something like that.
Oh, that's such a deal.
So now I have it, and it's amazing.
That's awesome. I don't have a plow. I have a guillotine, and I have managed to learn some tricks to actually cut the sides, like the forage, the top and bottom and forage of my books. But I know it's not the best. I'll eventually get a plow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm jealous you have one.
Yeah. So you are sort of opening the new world to us, because until now we mostly had bookbinders and other book professionals either from Europe or from the United States, and you are first bookbinder from a different North American country and from a different American country. And we wanted to ask you a bit about maybe the traditions of Mexican binding, if there are any, and what is the Mexican bookbinding world, because we have absolutely no knowledge about it.
Well, here in Monterrey, that's where I live, there's not a lot of people that do the kind of binding that I do. I mean, you can still bind, like, you can bind with black covers and gold stamping. You can find that, like, several people that are still doing that, but I don't know anyone that has actually even gone to school. I have no idea how those people started, but I think that it was just like a family business, and that's a very good question, actually. And I'm friends with a couple of them, so I have to ask them, like, how did they started their business, because I just know them from the business, but I have no idea how they started. So here, I know that there's, you know, some businesses like that, but no one doing the stuff that I like, the kind of bindings that I do. I have a lot of friends in Mexico City that are bookbinders, and there's a huge community in Mexico City. I'm all by myself here in Monterrey, but I used to travel often to take workshops, or just to go to Rodrigo's studio and work there for a bit, especially when I had some like book repair to do. When I like to be near him when I'm working, when it's something more than I think I can achieve. So, but there's a huge community over there, very different than what I have here, of course. So you can still find the commercial binderies in Mexico City, but there's all these people making tools, doing bookbinding, new techniques, teaching a bunch of classes. So it's a little bit different, but definitely better, I would say, because there's a lot of people doing it and more access to materials. Most of the stuff that I use here, even cloth, like I used to order it from Mexico City or even from the US. One of my students started a little shop. And I'm so fortunate to have it really close to here. And she's been selling paper and book cloth. But before she had the store, I had to order everything from either Mexico City or the States. I mean, you can't even find linen thread here.
Okay.
So I had to order.
Yeah, that's very interesting question on the supplies, because for example, here in Europe, many of bookbinders in many European countries, besides maybe France and Germany, relied upon ordering materials from United Kingdom. So now after Brexit, it's a lot of trouble for them to get the materials, because now it takes longer. You have to pay more custom taxes and all that stuff, and so that's all very upsetting. And of course, everybody can guess that in the United States you have much more supplies of everything as well. It works as well for bookbinding tools and materials. So it's really interesting to hear how it works in Mexico.
Yeah, there's actually a friend of mine making really, really awesome tools, and I'll give you all the contact info in case you want to share it, or if you can include it in the
sure.
presentation. She's really good. She does a lot of clasps and Teflon folders, very extended collection of Teflon folders, really good. I when I'm teaching workshops, I order stuff from her for the students, like when I'm making the kits for the students. Yeah, she's really good. I can show you some of the stuff that she's made for me. This is the last set of clasps she made for this book. These are brass. Yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah.
There's another headband.
Yeah.
We love those.
I love headbands. I love headbands. This is one of the classes that I took again with my friend Lucia. Yeah, there's a bunch of headbands in the class. It was fun.
And speaking of materials, I understand bookbinding, as did the books, came from Europe to Mexico. So the tradition is not as old as it is in Europe. But does it have any local flair? Do you use any materials that wouldn't be used outside, like, I don't know, alpaca leather? I'm just making it up.
Well, no, I have leather, sheep and goat. That's common to find. We have good quality leather, actually. But again, the prices here in Monterrey are very, very expensive. So sometimes I even have to order them from Mexico City, and even with the shipping, it's cheaper than what I find here. Sometimes if it's a really, really, really special project, I order directly from England. Their leather is amazing. The quality is just perfect especially for bookbinding. Leather here is mainly used for leather goods like shoes, bags, clothing. So it's tanned differently. Sometimes it can be really stretchy. But I think that now, as the bookbinding community is a bit larger, we can find better tanned leather for bookbinding, like that is not that stretchy. So there's this place where I get it from in Mexico, and so far it's been good quality.
And how is your community organized? Is there a guild? Is there a society? Are there exhibitions?
They get, I think for a couple of years, They've had some group exhibits. They get together a lot to have the just to sell stuff. Like they have this little bookbinding markets, and they sell the tools and materials. Sometimes the calligraphy people join those, so you can find calligraphy stuff in there. Some people sell their own books, or so that I think they're allowed to sell books, materials, and tools. So like a little book fair, but they have them often, so you can go and find stuff in those places too. Too bad they're very far
and
from.
do they mostly work for for home market, or do they sell internationally? Because say in Russia or in the Balkans, we talk to people from Greece and Bulgaria, people mostly work for international clients because there are just not enough orders for fine book binding.
I think there's plenty of local clients. I'm not sure with all my friends if they ever have international projects coming in, but here I've done stuff for some friends in San Diego, but only because they don't know any other bookbinder in the States, and we randomly met for whatever reason when I was living there, and that's why they contacted me for the services and not someone in San Diego, not because there's no one there, but because they don't know anyone there. But it's not, for me, it's not very common to get projects coming in internationally. It's more like the small book repairs that I've done there for clients here in Monterrey.
How was it during the lockdowns and this coronavirus year for you?
I'm loving it.
Okay. That's a good answer.
I'm a little weird, but yeah, I'm loving it. I've been working on all of the things that I've ever said, that I've always said, that whenever I have time, I'm going to finish this book. Whenever I have time, I'm going to finish this basket. Whenever I have time, I'm going to start an herb garden. And yeah, so all those things have been going on here. I've been finishing some projects. I've signed up for online workshops. I am actually taking a really cool workshop on Fishleather tanning. I don't know if you heard about that.
I've seen a photo in your Instagram, and it's a bit frightening.
I know, but it's so cool. So those two skins are the first ones I've ever tanned. One of them, I was softening it yesterday. So you just add a little bit more water, and I don't know where I left them. They're not here in the studio. Yeah, so if you don't soften the leather that much, it stays like the ones you saw in the picture. But I'll post another picture of the one without softening and the one that's softened. It does look a little bit different, and it's really cool because you don't use any chemicals. It's just pure. We use black tea for that, and it's pretty cool. I have those are white bass, the two of them. I actually have a salmon waiting on me to do the next part, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's really cool, and I can't wait to see how I'm going to use it in my books.
Oh, so you haven't tried it yet?
No, I haven't. I just did it like the last class. So it's a 2-session class, and the second session was on the 13th. So I'm still working on the ones I started in class, but then I started a couple extras later. So they're still in the tea solution, and hopefully over the weekend I can do the next part of the process, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's really cool.
I think Brenda Gallagher showed us some very posh Icelandic fish leathers, and she used them in her projects.
Did she buy it, or did she tan it herself?
She bought them.
No, she bought them. Yeah.
She cheated. I have to talk to her.
Thank you very much, Lucia, for talking to us and for spending some time with us and answering questions, showing all these projects. This was really interesting and well, educational. Many thanks to our viewers and supporters, and special thanks to our patrons on Patreon. Your pledges allow us to cover the expenses on editing of this podcast, which, well, we cherish your help quite a lot. Thank you very much for doing that. If anyone of our viewers would like to join the crowd on Patreon, please check the link down below in the description of this video. Pledges start with only $1, €1, or £1 per month, depending on your country. So for some people, it's not so much, and it will help us a lot with our new ideas and newer projects, and bringing French-speaking co-hosts to the project, and maybe Spanish-speaking co-hosts in the future. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching.
I'll volunteer for the Spanish-speaking co-host if you ever need someone to help you with that.
Yeah, we have a volunteer. Okay. Thanks again, and see you.
Thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah. See everybody next time. Bye.
See you. Thanks
Bye-bye.
again. Bye-bye.